My fiancée said she wanted emotional sovereignty, so I said, okay, and took her 3 best friends out for drinks: Chloe, Riley, Ava. My fiancée didn't expect that. The best part? None of them said no. I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. Dana came home from one of her yoga retreats, her eyes bright with something she called clarity, and dropped a bomb on me. She said we needed to talk, her voice calm and measured, like she was leading a meditation class instead of shattering my world. My name is Owen. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been a paramedic here for almost a decade. Steady job, decent life, nothing fancy, but nothing to complain about either. Dana's my fiancée, or she was, anyway. She's 30, a yoga influencer with a following that seems to hang on every word she says about energy and self-discovery. We've been engaged for a year, and I thought we were heading toward a solid, happy marriage. Turns out, I was wrong. She was wearing one of those silky, flowy robes she loves, white with a lotus pattern. She looked so serene it almost made me laugh. Almost. I've been doing some spiritual realignment, she started, leaning against the kitchen counter. I was sitting at the dining table, still in my uniform from my last shift, and I could already tell this wasn't just another one of her new wellness ideas. And I've come to realize monogamy just doesn't feel authentic for me anymore. I need to live in a way that honors my emotional sovereignty. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Emotional sovereignty, she said. That was new. I took a slow breath, my mind scrambling to catch up. So what does that mean for us? I asked, keeping my voice as calm as I could. My gut was already telling me exactly what it meant, but I needed to hear her say it. She crossed her arms and gave me a soft, almost pitying look. It means I want to open our relationship, Owen. I don't think I can marry you if I'm not living in alignment with my truth. There it was. The ultimatum, wrapped in a gentle voice and spiritual buzzwords. It felt like she just ripped the rug out from under me. I didn't say anything at first. I just nodded slowly, even though inside, my stomach was twisting. I loved this woman. I'd planned a future with her. But here she was, telling me she'd rather throw it all away than stick to what we promised each other. And the thing was, she expected me to fight for her, to beg her to stay monogamous, to prove that I was the only one she needed. But I didn't. I looked at her, took another breath, and said, okay. She blinked. Okay. She repeated, her voice breaking a little. Yeah, I said, my voice steady. If that's what you want, then go for it. The kitchen fell dead silent. I could see it in her eyes, the confusion, the way she hadn't planned for this. She expected me to be hurt, to beg, to plead. She didn't expect me to accept it. And definitely not this calmly. I stood up from the table and walked past her to the sink. I washed the last of the dishes from dinner, my hands shaking a little under the water. In that moment, it wasn't about me agreeing with her. It was about not giving her the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. When I turned back to her, she was still standing there, her mouth slightly open, searching for words. Are you sure? She asked finally. Yeah, I said again. You do what you need to do. I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes, just for a second. Then she nodded slowly, like she was convincing herself this was still what she wanted. She said something about going to bed early and drifted off to our bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen for a while, just standing there, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to her, my mind racing. She thought she could corner me. That if she threw out this new age ultimatum, I'd either crumble or fight for her in some grand, dramatic way. But I wasn't going to be cornered. I wasn't going to fight for someone who didn't want to be here. She wanted an open relationship? Fine. Let's see what that really looks like. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I realized that maybe this whole thing, our wedding, our future, wasn't what I thought it was at all. The morning after Dana dropped her little spiritual bomb, I woke up early. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spinning. She was still asleep next to me, her breath slow and even. I wondered what she dreamed about, probably some moonlit ceremony in Bali, or whatever else she thought she was missing out on. I got up quietly and made coffee, letting the bitterness of it ground me. Outside, the Arizona sun was already turning the sky a soft gold. I stood at the kitchen window, sipping my coffee and thinking about how quickly everything had flipped. Dana thought she could control the narrative. She thought she could declare our relationship open, and I'd just go along, playing the role of the supportive, understanding fiancé while she found herself. But if this was the game, I decided I'd play too. On my terms. I remembered the little things Dana had said over the years, the offhand comments that didn't seem like much at the time. Like the way she bragged about how her friends at the studio, Chloe, Riley, and Ava, thought I was grounded and masculine. How they'd laugh when I dropped by to pick Dana up, how they'd linger a little too long to say goodbye. It was like a spark caught in my head. If Dana wanted emotional sovereignty, fine. But she didn't get to decide I'd be left waiting around. So I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I found Chloe's number first. She was a free-spirited herbalist who always smelled like lavender and sandalwood. She'd once told Dana that she thought I had a kind energy. So I texted her, "Hey Chloe, would you be up for grabbing a drink sometime soon? Just to talk. No strings, no pressure." She responded within a few minutes. "Hey Owen, sure. That could be fun. When were you thinking?" I smiled at my phone. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, a polite refusal, maybe. But she was in. Next, I texted Riley. She was quieter than Chloe, more introspective, always carrying around books on nutrition and wellness. I figured she'd be the hardest sell. "Hey Riley, I know this might sound weird, but would you want to get dinner with me sometime?" Her reply took a little longer. But when it came, it was simple. Sure, why not? I stared at my phone, my heart beating faster than I'd admit. 2 out of 3. Then I hesitated. Ava, Dana's longtime friend and assistant, who never minced her words. She was blunt, funny, and always had this knowing smile whenever I was around. I sent her a message. "Hey Ava, you up for a drink sometime? I feel like we've never really talked one-on-one." Ava replied within seconds. "I'd love to, Owen." When? 3 for 3. I set the phone down and just stood there, feeling something shift inside me. I wasn't sure if this was petty or just survival, but it felt good. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for Dana to figure out who she was. I wasn't going to be the only one playing by the rules she'd rewritten. When Dana finally woke up, she wandered into the kitchen, hair messy and eyes still half asleep. "Morning," she said softly, like nothing had happened. "Morning," I replied, calm and even. She watched me for a moment, sensing something different. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." She didn't push. She poured herself some coffee and started talking about a workshop she wanted to host at the studio. I listened, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. I thought about Chloe's smile, Riley's quiet confidence, Ava's spark. Later that day, while Dana was at the studio teaching, I sat on the couch scrolling through their Instagram profiles. It felt a little surreal, like stepping into a parallel universe. They were all connected to Dana, all part of her world. But now, they were curious about mine. I wasn't planning some big revenge scheme. I didn't want to humiliate Dana or ruin her friendships. I just wanted her to see that she couldn't have it both ways. She couldn't throw our relationship to the wolves and expect me to stay in the shadows. That evening, I texted Chloe again. We set up a time for drinks on Friday. Riley wanted to meet for dinner on Saturday. Ava, she said she was free any night that week. It was happening. My hands shook a little as I put my phone down, but it wasn't fear. It was something else. A quiet, thrilling certainty that I was done playing the part of the steady, reliable man who waited for scraps of love. If Dana wanted to explore, I'd explore too. And I'd do it my way. Friday night came fast. I met Chloe at a small bar in downtown Phoenix. One of those places with craft beers on tap and an easy kind of energy. She wore a loose white dress that seemed to glow in the neon light, and her smile was warm but a little unsure. We talked about everything but Dana. Chloe told me about the herbal remedies she'd been working on, her dream of opening her own wellness shop one day. I listened, genuinely interested, and realized how long it had been since someone asked me about what I wanted, what I thought. We didn't kiss or even touch hands, but there was an ease between us, something real and simple. When we parted ways that night, she gave me a hug that lasted just a second longer than usual. Saturday night, I had dinner with Riley at a quiet little place that specialized in fresh, local food. She was nervous at first, like she was worried she was betraying Dana just by being there. But once we started talking, she relaxed. "You know," she said, stirring her tea. "Dana always said you were the most grounded person she'd ever met. It's kind of funny, isn't it? How she's the one who's always searching for something more." I nodded, thinking about how true that was. Riley didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. We were just two people sharing a meal, talking about music and movies and life outside of yoga studios and spiritual jargon. By the time I got home, I was feeling something I hadn't in weeks. Calm. I wasn't sure what would come of these dates, but for the first time, I wasn't waiting for Dana to decide what my life looked like. That Sunday, Dana and I were having dinner at home. I cooked grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, something simple. She kept looking at me like she was trying to figure me out. Finally, she asked, "So, how was your weekend?" I set down my fork, took a sip of water, and said, "Good. I went out with Chloe on Friday and dinner with Riley last night." Her face froze for a second, just a flicker, but it was enough. She tried to smile. "Oh, that's great, Owen. I'm glad you're, taking this open thing seriously." I watched her carefully. "You said you wanted freedom. So, I'm just seeing what that looks like." "Of course," she said, her voice a little too bright. "It's what we talked about." But I could see the way her jaw clenched, the way her fingers tapped against the table. She wasn't as cool with it as she wanted me to believe. The next morning, I caught her glancing at my phone while I was making coffee. I'd gotten a text from Ava, just a casual, "Hey, you free this week?" Dana saw my smile when I read it. Her eyes narrowed for just a second. She tried to cover it with a laugh. "You're really making the most of this, huh?" I shrugged. "You said you wanted open. So, I'm open." She didn't say anything, but the rest of the morning was weirdly quiet. She barely spoke to me, just moved around the house like she was looking for something to clean or organize. Later that day, I got another text from Chloe, asking if I wanted to go on a hike with her and some friends. I said yes without hesitation. And when I told Dana, she just nodded, her lips pressed tight together. I realized then that she never really thought I'd take her up on it. She thought this was her thing, her new chapter, and that I'd stay in the background, waiting for her to come back around. But that wasn't happening. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the rules and then act shocked when I followed them. That night, I lay in bed next to her, scrolling through my phone. She was turned away from me, her shoulders tense under the sheets. I knew she was awake. I knew she was listening to every soft buzz and click as I messaged Chloe and Riley back. I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Because the second she told me she wanted something else, she lost the right to tell me how I should feel about it. She wanted open. So that's what she got. And if that made her uncomfortable, well, she'd have to sit with that. The days after I told Dana about my plans with Chloe and Riley were tense. She tried to act like nothing was wrong. She'd do her yoga flows in the morning, burn sage around the house like it would cleanse her confusion away. But I could feel it in the air between us. Thick and uncomfortable. One night, a few days later, she came out of the bedroom in one of her silky robes, this one deep green with gold trim, tied loose around her waist. She looked like some goddess from one of her social media posts, but the way she was looking at me was anything but serene. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low. I put down my phone and leaned back on the couch. "Okay." She walked over slowly, like she was gathering her thoughts. I feel like you're not doing this in the right spirit," she said. "This isn't about revenge or tit for tat. It's supposed to be about spiritual growth, about exploration." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the kind of growth where you get to do what you want and I'm supposed to watch?" She flinched, just a little, but kept going. "I'm just worried, Owen, about your emotional state. You're not a free love kind of person. I don't want you to get hurt trying to prove something." I took a slow breath. "I'm not proving anything. You said you wanted open. I'm following your lead." She bit her lip, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for backup. "I just think, maybe we rushed into this. Maybe we should slow down, not see other people until we've processed it." I cut her off. "No, Dana. You gave me an ultimatum. You told me it was this or nothing. So now I'm in. You don't get to change the rules because it's not how you pictured it." For a second, she looked like she was going to argue. Then she took a deep breath and shifted gears. Her voice got soft, almost pleading. "I'm just worried about us, Owen. About what this is doing to our bond. You're so calm about it. It makes me feel like you don't care." I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the dark street below. "I do care," I said quietly. "But I'm done twisting myself into knots trying to keep you happy while you chase whatever you think you're missing." She didn't say anything. She just stood there, the robe slipping off one shoulder, her face tight with something that looked like fear. Then, like clockwork, my phone rang. I checked the screen. Derek, her brother. I answered, my voice calm. "Hey, Derek. What's up?" "Owen, man, I heard from Dana. She's really upset," he said, his voice low and urgent. "She says you're retaliating or something. That this isn't what she meant when she asked for an open relationship." I almost laughed. "You mean she's upset that I'm doing exactly what she asked for?" He hesitated. "Look, I'm just saying, maybe you should take a step back, talk it through. She's really hurting." I let out a slow breath. "Derek, I respect you, but this is between me and Dana. And you know what? She can't have it both ways. She wanted this. She doesn't get to take it back because she didn't think I'd actually say yes." There was a pause. Then he sighed. "All right, man. I just wanted to make sure you weren't doing something you'd regret." "I'm not," I said simply. "But she might be." I hung up and turned back to Dana. She was sitting on the couch now, her shoulders hunched, staring at her hands. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said. "But I'm not going to let you use spiritual growth as an excuse to treat me like an afterthought." She didn't look up. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," she whispered. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." She finally raised her head, her eyes glassy. "So what happens now?" I took a breath. "Now? Now we live with the choices we made." For the first time since that night in the kitchen, she looked like she finally understood that she wasn't the only one who got to decide how this played out. I met up with Chloe on a Tuesday night. We kept it simple, just a couple of beers at a cozy bar near downtown Phoenix. She showed up in jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different without all the usual studio energy around her, more relaxed. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey, Owen. Thanks for inviting me out. Thanks for saying yes, I said, and we both laughed, a little awkward but warm. We found a table in the corner and ordered drinks. I could feel the curiosity in her eyes, the same way I'd been curious too. After a few sips of beer, Chloe leaned forward. I gotta ask, are you sure you're okay with all this? I mean, I know Dana's been telling everyone about her new ideas. I shrugged. I'm okay. I'm just rolling with it, you know? She wanted open. I'm seeing what that looks like. Chloe frowned. It's just, I don't know, Owen. I love Dana, but she's always been kind of restless. She talks about finding new energy, but sometimes I think she just likes the feeling of novelty. Like she's always chasing something she can't hold on to. I listened to her words, feeling something in my chest loosen. I'd felt it too, that restlessness in Dana. The way she'd always talk about new experiences, new connections, but never really settle in the present. Chloe took another sip of her beer, her fingers tracing the rim of the glass. I just hope you're not getting caught in that, she said. You've always seemed steady, like you know who you are. I gave a small smile. I'm starting to figure it out at least. We talked for another hour, easy conversation flowing between us. She told me about her plans to travel to Oregon to study herbal medicine, how she felt stuck in Dana's shadow sometimes. I told her about the long shifts as a paramedic, the way the city never seemed to sleep. When we finally walked outside, the air was crisp, and she turned to me with a small, warm smile. This was nice, Owen. Really? Yeah, I said. It was. I didn't kiss her. It didn't feel like the right time. But there was a quiet understanding between us, a kind of respect for what was happening. When I got home, Dana was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes scanning my face like she was trying to read a story she didn't understand. How was your night? She asked, her voice light and casual. It was good, I said simply, taking off my jacket and hanging it on the back of the chair. She nodded, but her fingers were tied around her phone. Good. I'm glad. There was a long pause. She looked back down at her screen, but I could see her shoulders tense. I could almost hear the thoughts running through her head, how this wasn't how it was supposed to go. She took a deep breath, setting her phone down carefully on the coffee table. Owen, she said slowly, I didn't think this was what you wanted. I thought maybe you'd wait for me to figure things out. I leaned back against the wall, crossing my arms. You said you wanted open, Dana. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't have a choice too. Her eyes flickered. So, you're really doing this? You're really going to see them? I nodded. Yeah, I'm going to see where it goes. For a moment, she just looked at me, her lips parting like she was about to say something else. But then she closed her mouth, her expression hardening. Fine, she said. Do what you want. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water, leaving her sitting there in her quiet fury. In that moment, I realized something important. It wasn't about me getting even. It wasn't about making her jealous. It was about showing her, and myself, that I had a right to be more than just a bystander in my own relationship. Chloe was right. Dana wasn't looking for connection. She was looking for novelty. And I wasn't going to let that keep me stuck. A few days later, I met Riley for dinner at a quiet little restaurant on the edge of town. She wore a simple white dress, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. She smiled when I walked in, but I could see the flicker of nerves in her eyes. Hey, she said, her voice soft as she hugged me. Thanks for coming out tonight. Of course, I said. I'm glad you agreed to meet me. We sat down at a corner table, the low hum of conversation around us. The waiter brought us water, and for a minute we just looked at each other, both of us taking in the strangeness of the situation. Riley took a sip of her water and set the glass down, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the napkin. I have to be honest, she said. Dana called me. She told me I shouldn't come tonight. She said it was disrespectful. I raised my eyebrows, feeling a small spark of anger. Disrespectful? I echoed. Riley nodded, her cheeks flushing. She said it would make things worse. That it would humiliate her if people saw us together. I let out a short laugh. That's Rich, I said. She's the one who started all this. She wanted open. She doesn't get to control how it looks. Riley looked down at her hands, her voice quiet. I told her that. I told her she couldn't have it both ways. She got really upset. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine, just for a second. I'm sorry she put you in that position, I said. You didn't ask for any of this. She gave me a small, grateful smile. It's not your fault, Owen. Honestly. I think she's just scared. Scared of what? I asked. Scared of losing control, Riley said simply. Dana's always been the one in charge of everything. The one who sets the tone. And now she can't. I nodded, feeling that truth settled deep in my chest. She doesn't get to decide how I live my life, I said. Not anymore. We ordered dinner, pasta for her, steak for me, and fell into an easy conversation. Riley was soft-spoken but thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than she talked. She told me about her job at the nutrition clinic, how she loved helping people but hated how Dana always made her feel like she wasn't doing enough. She has this way of making you feel small, Riley said quietly, stirring her pasta. Like you're not spiritual enough, or adventurous enough, or enough. I nodded, because I knew exactly what she meant. When dinner was over, I walked her to her car. She turned to me before getting in, her expression serious. Owen, just be careful, okay? I know this is new for both of us, but I don't want you to get caught up in her games. I know, I said. I'm done playing games. I just want to live honestly, with whoever wants to be part of that. She smiled then, and for a moment I could see the relief in her eyes. I'd like that, she said softly. When I got home that night, Dana was waiting for me in the living room. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch, her phone in her lap. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes sharp. So, dinner with Riley, she said flatly. Yeah, I said calmly, setting my keys on the counter. It was nice. Her jaw tightened. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me? People at the studio are already talking. They think I don't know. They think I'm losing you. I leaned against the counter, my arms crossed. Dana, you're the one who wanted this. I'm just living by the rules you set. She stood up, her voice rising. But not like this. This isn't what I meant. You're not supposed to be flaunting it. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. You don't get to tell me what this is supposed to look like, Dana. You said open. I'm open. You don't get to change your mind now that it's not just you. She opened her mouth like she was going to argue, then shut it again. Her shoulders slumped, and for a second, she just looked tired. This isn't what I wanted, she whispered finally. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you gave me an ultimatum, I said quietly. She didn't say anything after that. She just sank back onto the couch, staring at the floor like it held the answers she was looking for. And for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Like I wasn't just reacting to her anymore, I was finally standing up for myself. A couple days later, I was finishing up my shift when my phone buzzed with a call from Dana's mother, Margot. I hesitated for a second before picking up, already knowing how this was going to go. Owen, dear, she started, her voice dripping with forced calm. I just wanted to talk to you about everything that's been going on. Dana is, well, she's very upset. I let out a small sigh. I know, Margot. She paused, probably expecting me to say more. When I didn't, she continued, her voice tightening. I just don't understand why you're doing this. You know how sensitive Dana is. She's always had such a delicate spirit. I almost laughed at that, but I didn't. Margot, Dana made this choice. I'm just following through. But she's saying you're flaunting it, Margot said, her tone hardening just a little. That you're trying to hurt her. Is that really the kind of man you want to be? I took a breath, steadying myself. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm living by the terms Dana set. She doesn't get to dictate how I do that just because it's not what she expected. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Margot shifting in her seat. I just think you should be the bigger person, she said softly. Family is about compromise, Owen. I almost smiled at that. Compromise? That's funny, because all I've been doing for the past year is compromise. She didn't answer that. Just sighed heavily, like she was disappointed. Think about what you're doing, she said finally. You're tearing this family apart. I ended the call after that, feeling oddly calm. She could believe whatever she wanted. I was done explaining myself. Later that night, I got a text from Ava. Ava was never one to beat around the bush. So, drink still on for tomorrow, she wrote, followed by a winking emoji. I'll bring the incense. We'll cleanse this drama away. I couldn't help but laugh. Ava didn't care about Dana's carefully curated narrative. She didn't care about the rules or the pretense. She just wanted to see me. Maybe because she was just as tired of Dana's spiritual games as I was. The next day, I met Ava at a cozy little bar on the other side of town. She was wearing a loose blouse and jeans, her hair up in a messy bun. She gave me a hug when I walked in, her smile bright and unapologetic. So, she said, raising an eyebrow, how's it feel to be the bad guy in Dana's soap opera? I laughed. Honestly, kind of freeing. She grinned. I bet. She's been calling me nonstop, you know, begging me to cancel, telling me I'm a traitor. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of my beer. She's been doing the same with everyone. Ava shrugged. Well, she doesn't get to tell me who I can hang out with. And honestly, it's about time someone called her bluff. We talked for hours, laughter breaking through the heaviness that had settled in my life. Ava didn't tiptoe around the truth, and that was exactly what I needed. She didn't pretend to be shocked or act like I was doing something wrong. She just got it. When I got home that night, Dana was waiting up for me. She was sitting on the couch, her phone clutched in her hands. Did you have fun? She asked, her voice tight. I met her gaze calmly. Yeah, I did. She swallowed hard, her eyes flickering with something that looked like panic. This is humiliating, Owen. You're humiliating me. I shook my head. No, Dana. You're humiliating yourself. You're the one who wanted this. You're the one who set the terms. She didn't answer, just looked down at her phone, her shoulders stiff. For the first time, I realized she was finally starting to understand that she couldn't control how this would play out. That no amount of sage or carefully curated social media posts could hide the cracks she'd created in her perfect image. And that was enough for me. For now, at least. A couple nights later, I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through some old photos on my phone. Pictures of Dana and me in the early days, when everything felt easy. It almost felt like someone else's life. That's when Ava texted me. "Still on for drinks?" she asked, adding a little flame emoji that made me smile despite myself. "Yeah," I typed back, looking forward to it. But before I could even set my phone down, Dana walked in. She was barefoot, wearing an oversized t-shirt that hung off one shoulder. She looked younger like that, vulnerable. But her eyes were hard. "We need to talk," she said quietly. I sighed and put my phone away. "All right." She took a deep breath, tears already welling up. "I don't want this anymore, Owen. I don't want any of it. I don't want you seeing them. I don't want us living like this." I leaned back in my chair, watching her carefully. "So what do you want, Dana?" "I want things to go back to the way they were," she said, her voice breaking. "I want you to forgive me. I want us to just forget this ever happened." I swallowed hard, feeling a dull ache in my chest. "You can't just erase the past month, Dana. You wanted this. You made it happen." She shook her head, wiping at her cheeks. "I was wrong. I was lost. I thought I needed something new, something exciting. But I don't. I just want you." I stood up slowly and walked over to her, close enough that I could feel the heat of her skin. "Dana, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm not trying to get back at you. But you need to understand, you broke something in us. And it can't just be glued back together." She looked up at me, her eyes desperate. "Please, Owen. I know I messed up. But can't we start over?" I closed my eyes for a second, feeling the weight of everything we'd shared, everything we'd lost. When I opened them again, my voice was calm, steady. "No, we can't start over. Because this wasn't just a mistake, Dana. It was a choice. Your choice." She let out a soft sob, covering her mouth with her hand. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm done pretending this is something we can fix. I'm done pretending I'm okay with being treated like an option." Her face crumpled. "So that's it. You're just calling it off." I nodded. "Yeah, I'm calling it off. I'll move out by the end of the week. We'll figure out how to split things up." She sank onto the couch, her shoulders shaking. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "But it did." For a long time, neither of us said anything. She just cried, and I stood there, feeling a strange kind of peace settle over me. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about showing her what she'd lost. It was about me finally seeing the truth, finally refusing to let her rewrite what we were. When I left the room, she didn't try to follow me. She just sat there, curled up in her own pain. And I knew that was the end. I moved out that weekend. Packed up my stuff in a few quiet hours on Saturday morning, the sun streaming through the kitchen window like it didn't even know how much was ending. Dana didn't try to stop me. She just sat there on the couch, hugging her knees to her chest, watching me with red-rimmed eyes. "Where will you go?" she asked softly, her voice hoarse. I shrugged. "I'll figure it out. Got some friends in Tempe I can crash with for a while." She didn't answer, just nodded slowly, as if she was still trying to process the fact that I wasn't going to bend. I wasn't going to fix what she'd broken. By that night, I was gone. I took only what was mine: clothes, books, a couple pictures from better times. The rest, I didn't care about anymore. I heard from mutual friends over the next few days. Little tidbits here and there, like how Dana was trying to spin the story to save face. She told people she'd been caught up in the new age hype, that she'd been misguided by some influencer nonsense. But no one was really buying it. Most of them had seen enough to know the truth. Chloe and Riley both texted me. Chloe said she was sorry things ended the way they did. Riley said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Ava was blunt, as always. "She played stupid games," she wrote. "Now she's dealing with the prize." Dana tried once, too. She sent me a long, rambling text a week after I left. It was all about how she'd learned so much from the experience, how she hoped I could find peace. I didn't bother replying. Meanwhile, I focused on building a life that was just mine. I moved into a small place on the edge of Phoenix. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I started spending more time with the friends I'd lost touch with during the chaos. Old running buddies, people from work. They didn't want explanations, didn't care about the drama. They were just glad to see me. I went back to the trails in the early mornings, the same ones I used to run before Dana's world took over mine. There was something about the quiet out there, the red dirt under my shoes, the sound of my own breath in my ears. It felt clean, honest. On weekends, I started volunteering at an animal rescue shelter just outside the city, helping out with the dogs, cleaning up the runs. It felt good, like I was putting good back into the world, even if it was just in small ways. I didn't feel bitter, surprisingly. I thought I would. Thought I'd be angry for months, years even. But instead, there was this relief. Like I'd been carrying someone else's baggage for too long, and now I could finally set it down. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about Dana, about how it all went so sideways. But then I'd remember the look in her eyes that night when I told her I was done. The way she finally seemed to see me, really see me, not as some spiritual project to fix or a stable place to return to, but as a person with his own lines he wouldn't let her cross. And that was enough. A month passed. The city was starting to bake under the May heat, and life had settled into something quieter, something better. I still worked long shifts as a paramedic, but at the end of the day, I went home to my own space. No more drama, no more tightrope walking around someone else's moods. One Saturday morning, I sat out on my little balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up over the desert. I thought about everything that had happened, the late-night arguments, the way Dana had tried to twist love into something that only served her. I thought about how quickly it had all come undone. But I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad anymore, either. I just felt clear. Looking back, I realized it was never really about desire for Dana. It was about control. About keeping me locked in a box while she got to run free. I'd spent so long trying to be understanding, to bend enough so she wouldn't feel trapped. But it turned out she wasn't looking for understanding. She was looking for someone who wouldn't call her on her bullshit. And I wasn't that person anymore. I thought about Chloe and Riley, how they'd both been kind enough to show me a different kind of honesty. How Ava, with her blunt humor and no-nonsense attitude, had given me the push I needed to see that I wasn't stuck. That none of us were. I thought about Dana's text, still sitting unanswered in my phone. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to reply. She could tell whatever story she needed to make herself feel better. That was her business, not mine. I'd learned something important in all this. That love without respect is just another kind of prison. And I wasn't going to live in a prison of someone else's making. So I finished my coffee and got up, pulling on my running shoes. I headed out to the trails, the desert air still cool and sharp in my lungs. I ran past the saguaro cacti, the sun climbing higher with every step. I didn't think about Dana. I didn't think about the past. I just ran, feeling my legs burn, my heart steady and strong. By the time I made it back to my apartment, sweat dripping down my neck, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in months. I showered, made breakfast, and headed over to the rescue shelter. The dogs greeted me with wagging tails and happy barks, and I realized I didn't need anything else. I didn't need to prove my worth to anyone. I didn't need to play by someone else's rules. I had my own, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. And as I watched the sun set that evening, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold, I felt a quiet gratitude. Not for what had happened, but for what it taught me. For the fact that I'd walked away before I said, I do, to a lifetime of playing second fiddle in someone else's game. And that was the best choice I'd ever made.